We all deserve a pat on the back. We made it. We survived 8 long weeks of what seasoned political watchers called the dullest election campaign in our country's history. The only exciting thing is the result. It's still too close to determine exactly who is going to run the country. So stand by for some Canberra chaos. And to try to make sense of what's likely to happen next, earlier today I spoke with Nine's veteran political editor, Laurie Oakes. How do you think Turnbull's feeling right now?
I think he's feeling really angry. I think he really does feel robbed. He does think that the scare campaign was underhand, but people who've been in politics for a long while are used to it.
The Prime Minister says he can govern in his own right. Can he?
Well, no one knows yet. We probably won't know for some days.
He seemed pretty sure that he could. What does he know that we don't know?
He'd been advised. Look, I think probably it'll end up with a very narrow hair's breadth majority for the Liberal Party, but it's just as likely it'll be a hung parliament. But either way, Malcolm Turnbull's authority is shot. He went into this election needing to establish his authority, having rolled Tony Abbott. Well, he's done the opposite. His authority is in shreds.
So the PM's by no means safe?
Well, look, I think he's probably safe because I don't think that Tony Abbott will be returned to the leadership, and there's no other obvious candidate at the moment. But I don't think Malcolm Turnbull has any strength as leader. It's going to take a lot of political skill to rebuild his strength and authority. And in the meantime, it's hard to see him getting much done.
What we're talking about are the dark arts of politics, aren't we?
Yeah.
We had so much hope in Malcolm Turnbull because he had a career outside of politics. He was actually a guy that could do things in the real world. But we underestimate the dark arts of politics, don't we?
There are natural politicians and there are people who are not natural politicians. Bill Shorten's not a Rhodes Scholar, but he's every inch a politician. He lives and breathes politics, basically all he's ever done. So that was an unequal contest in that sense. It was a politician versus a non-politician. And
it was a rich man versus a union rep too.
Well, that's true. And I noticed last night there was a reference to when Malcolm Turnbull went out to the western suburbs of Sydney, one voter said he looked at his cufflinks and decided he couldn't vote for him. Was
it scandalous, the Medi-Scare campaign, as Malcolm thought it was and said it was last night?
Oh, look, it was a dishonest campaign.
But it's not the first one.
No, it's not. No, of course.
The Libs invented that.
You're not going to privatise Medicare. No one would buy it because it loses. It doesn't make money. So it's silly in that sense. But scare campaigns only work if there's some element of truth. And thanks to Tony Abbott's 2014 budget, there was an element of truth in this. I mean, there had been cutbacks in health services, so that gave this scare campaign credibility.
The question is, would Abbott have done better?
No. If Tony Abbott was still the leader of the Liberal Party, we'd be here discussing the new Shorten government.
Was there anything surprised you during the campaign, apart from the result?
What surprised me, I think, was how well Bill Shorten campaigned. But Bill Shorten had actually been practising all year. He came back from his Christmas break. He started crisscrossing the country, campaigning right across Australia, having town hall meetings. So by the time the official campaign began, Bill Shorten he'd hit his straps.
What about the Senate? Look at the Senate.
Well, the Senate's a dog's breakfast. It's a circus.
The redhead is back.
Yeah, well, the times seem to suit Pauline Hanson. I mean, your disillusionment with traditional political parties and traditional politics, but also fear of globalisation, fear for our jobs, fear of foreigners and what they might do. It's all around the world, and we saw it yesterday. Pauline Hanson's back with a vengeance.
Over the years, in observing politics, do you ever become disillusioned by it? I mean, is it getting better or worse, our system? Is it still working?
In Australia, it's getting worse, but I think there's still time to salvage it. And Malcolm Turnbull was probably on the right track when he promised a new kind of politics. He said Australians are sick of this personal nastiness. We've got to do things better. We've got to get together. We've got to stick together. But that only lasted, of course, till last night when he gave his speech at the end of the count, and he gave that angry, bitter speech. Even though he's probably going to remain Prime Minister, he was saying, we was robbed.
Yes.
I think...
You said famously, that this is the first time a guy has said we was robbed without being beaten.
Well, that's right. So I think that idea of more civilised politics has been abandoned straight away, and it's a pity because I think Australians won't respond to this kind of nastiness and the sort of chaos we've seen in our politics. They do want stability, and we're not going to get it because of the result we've got in this election.
We always remember what Winston Churchill said, don't we? That democracy is the very worst form of government, but...
Except for all the others.
Except for all the others.
I think that's true, but democracy is pretty hard to manage. And I go back to that theme, you've got to be a natural politician, you've got to have a feel for it, a feel for Parliament, a feel for the system, a feel for people. And, you know, maybe it's because he came to politics late, but Malcolm Turnbull, I think, doesn't really have that. And he's going to have to develop it somehow.
In a hurry.
In a hurry, yeah.